What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 535 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. Tomorrow is Leap Day, actually, which no one gives a shit about, probably except for me. The only reason I bring that up is because we're one day off from recording on Leap Day. But the funny thing about that is that that'll be the first ever WrestleRant radio, I believe, that I've ever done on Leap Day. Now, I've done the show since 2013. There was a Leap Day in 2012, 2016, and 2020. In 2016, it fell on a Monday, which we would have recorded hashtag on that day. So we actually have done hashtag AskGSM on Leap Day before. Again, nothing that no one would give a shit about except for me. And then the last time we had Leap Day was on a Saturday, and I went to an Evolve show that day, actually, 4 years ago. So, WrestleRant Radio, a rare WrestleRant Radio on a Leap Day coming tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. But anyway, we're on February 28th here today. A lot of questions to get to within a very short period of time. So I'm going to try to not spend too much time in any one question because we have a lot of great questions this week. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below on the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Jordan B. from YouTube, their question was, do you think WWE should ban the diving headbutt for every time I see Chad Gable do the move? I will be afraid that he is going to give himself a concussion. I also remember reading something about Harley Race's regret being that he invented the move. Yeah, I mean, they probably should. I'm surprised they haven't. I know after the Benoit stuff in 2007, I don't know if anyone did the headbutt after that for a very long time. I feel like no one did the headbutt after Benoit until, I want to say Daniel Bryan years later, and now Chad Gable obviously does it as well. Among other people, I would imagine. I mean, I know Gable and Bryan are the two that come to mind. I am very surprised they still allow that move. I know, they didn't do the crippler crossface because it was a Benoit move, but, that didn't contribute to his issues. The headbutt did. The headbutt definitely did. Even Harley Race, like you said, has regretted even inventing the move because of the concussions it gave him and the head trauma and stuff like that. Now, I don't know. I mean, I know Bryan has had a lot of seizures in his lifetime. How many of those have been attributed to the headbutts? I don't know. Gable, I don't know how many issues he's had with the headbutts over the course of his career, but it almost doesn't even really matter. I think part of the Benoit issue, not entirely obviously, there's a lot that went into that, was the headbutts and the concussions it gave him and, just rattling your brain and shit like that. It's a cool move. Do you really need to be doing diving headbutts? Probably not. So, yeah, I mean, I would like to see them get rid of it. Until there's more issues that rack up. I mean, they probably won't get rid of it or ban the move, but why wait until that point, Micah Does It from YouTube, their first question was, would Jade Cargill make a first great girl to be managed by Paul Heyman, and if not, who? Good question, but no. I just don't really see the chemistry, synergy, what have you, between Paul Heyman and Jade Cargill. I haven't seen many people say that anyway, but I don't really like the idea of Jade being a Paul Heyman girl. The person I would like to see Jade paired with, if anyone, and this was brought up here on the show a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, was MVP. I think MVP and Jade would be a perfect pairing. I like Omos. I mean, I think Omos isn't very good, but I think Omos as a person is super fucking nice. I've said that before. He doesn't need MVP. I mean, I think the pairing worked a couple of years ago when they were trying really aggressively to push Omos as a singles guy. That didn't really work. He's not even on the show at this point. He's been on the show maybe twice in the past year. Get MVP the fuck away from Omos. Use MVP on the show. It's a waste to not use him. So I would love to see MVP with Jade Cargill. I feel like that would be a pairing, a perfect pairing, and they would work really well together. The Paul Heyman girl thing, I think, Paul Heyman with anyone else but, I think people said for a long time, Paul Heyman will manage no one else but Brock Lesnar for the rest of his career. And then the Bloodline came along, and it's worked out amazingly well, obviously. I feel like the Paul Heyman girl thing, no one on the current roster really makes sense to be a Paul Heyman girl. The only name I could conceivably see, if she were to change up her gimmick a little bit, could maybe be, because they're both equally annoying from a character standpoint, Tiffany Stratton. I feel like she has the upside to make it work. I feel like Again, she's not serious like a Paul Heyman would be, but Paul Heyman's also really fucking annoying. The Tiffany character can be annoying as well. I feel like those two could work well together. That's not really something I'm petitioning for or longing for, because I just don't really feel like it's necessary. I feel like she could be successful on her own. The only person to me in the past 10, 15 years that came across as the perfect Paul Heyman girl, had they tried it out, would have been Ronda Rousey. And even then, I'm not even really sure it would have been successful. But Ronda, her promos were not good. More often than not, her promos, babyface, heel, didn't even matter. Were just not fucking good. And I feel like if they didn't really have her talk as much, and she was with Paul. And now I know with Paul, like, Punk did a lot of the talking. Roman's done a lot of the talking. Paul isn't talking for them. But I feel like with that dynamic, he could be doing the talking for her. That would have worked in like 2018, 2019, maybe even when she came back in 2022. But they never did it. They had a lot of opportunities to do it, and he could have easily split his time. I mean, Paul Heyman was definitely splitting his time between Brock and CM Punk on television back in 2013. So they could have very easily had Heyman do both Brock and Ronda on separate shows or in separate storylines. They would never even have to interact. Maybe even build to an intergender match on pay-per-view between two former UFC, two of the most dominant stars in UFC history. That would have been pretty cool. They never did it. So, I think Paul Heyman, and I know they're not close, but like he was doing some of the writing for her storylines on the show at one point. And again, just the fact they never bothered to pair them up on the show, I don't know why that never happened. I don't know if it was a Vince thing or if it was a Ronda or Heyman thing where they didn't want to be together on TV. I'm not sure, but I feel like that would have worked out well and at least worth a shot. His second question, upon returning to WWE, who should be Braun Strowman's first feud and when do you see him coming back? He should be back soon. I mean, he's been gone for almost a year now. I think it was a neck injury, a neck surgery that he had. But I've seen him a lot of like these PR things, like doing interviews for the company. He was at that WWE World Experience thing in Saudi Arabia, promoting that with the other WWE talent. So it's not like he can't travel. And I think he even said on Instagram recently that he is on his way back soon. I would imagine after WrestleMania. I don't know if he would be back before then, because if he is back before then, what the fuck do we even do with Braun Strowman at WrestleMania? They didn't even have a WrestleMania match for him last year. I mean, he was on the card, but he was in that pointless WrestleMania showcase match, so I don't think he'd be back before Mania. He may not even be back for a while until like the summer. My guess is he's probably close, if not ready to return, so he'll probably be back after WrestleMania would be my guess. His first feud back, it depends on what show he ends up on and what the rosters look like post-Mania with the draft and all. I've always said I feel like this is definitely not the case because he's been doing nothing for so fucking long now. I felt like they were keeping Bronson Reed free of a feud, and they were kind of building him up to feud with Braun when he came back. Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman. I'm getting the Brauns mixed up here, but I feel like that'd be a good feud provided that Bronson Reed goes over in the end. I feel like the big man dynamic could work. I mean, Braun Strowman had some pretty good big man matches with Big Show, Mark Henry, even Gunther last year, even Omos, even those matches weren't awful. So I feel like him and Bronson Reed could work well together. It'd be a big win for Bronson Reed to beat a former Intercontinental world champion, stuff like that. So we haven't gotten it yet because Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman never crossed paths before Braun Strowman got hurt. But I feel like that'd be a fine feud, assuming they're ending up on the same show when Bronson Reed comes out of WrestleMania and Braun Strowman's ready to return. Next question, which match do you wish we could have in WWE? We could have seen in WWE, but we didn't get it. Samoa Joe versus Roman Reigns for the WWE Championship. The Undisputed Era as babyfaces versus the Bloodline heel in War Games. Gunther versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 40. Then CM Punk versus Rollins at WrestleMania 40. I mean, obviously, Punk and Rollins at WrestleMania 40, you're not really giving a specific event for the other matches, aside from Gunther and Brock. For the Undisputed Bloodline match, that's not a specific event aside from War Games, and you're just saying Samoa Joe and Roman randomly for, like, the WWE title. Obviously, Punk and Rollins for the world title, but I feel like we're going to get that when Punk comes back anyway. So, I feel like the biggest match of these four that you mentioned would be Gunther and Brock, because I don't think we're ever going to get that match. With the way Brock was kind of canceled, I don't know if Brock's ever going to be back in WWE, nor should he be if that stuff is true. So, Gunther and Brock would be the big what-if match. Undisputed Era and Bloodline was never a match that really appealed to me. I feel like Undisputed Era in The Shield would have been a match that was like, oh, okay, that's kind of intriguing. That sounds like a really cool match. So that match, yes. Bloodline, no. I feel like the Bloodline would fucking kill the Undisputed Era. I just don't really feel like they're a threat. the Bloodline are way more dominant. I love the Undisputed Era. They were a great faction, but I feel like they were never nearly as dominant as the Bloodline have been in WWE. With Roman Reigns especially kind of being the one that puts them over the edge. I mean, the match and feud would be interesting, but I just don't really feel like that's a great match. As far as like on paper, feeling even and whatnot, Roman Reigns would kill Bobby Fish in 10 seconds. Samoa Joe and Roman for the WWE title, sure, we never saw that specifically, but we did see Roman and Joe many times over the course of 2018, maybe 2019 as well, probably, I think 2017, 2018. They had a handful of matches, and they were always really, really good matches. I remember the Backlash match was not too great, at Backlash 2018, I think it was. But they had a series of matches for the Intercontinental Championship on Raw in early 2018 that were actually excellent. So we did get Joe and Roman a lot, never Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. Like current Samoa Joe versus current Roman Reigns would be great, but I feel like the big what-if match, because we've even seen Punk and Rollins before, but we've never seen Gunther and Brock aside from their one interaction in the Rumble last year, so I'd probably go with that one. Chris W. from YouTube. I got to mention this to Chris real quick. You mentioned, maybe about a month or so ago, you mentioned, watch this movie Vision Quest, and then you asked me after the fact if I seen it yet. I still said no. I had other stuff to catch up on before then. I'm pretty much caught up now on stuff I'm wanting to watch and stuff like that. I was watching the X-Men animated series recently. Completely destroyed it. Watched it in 8 days. Just because the episodes were so quick. My point is that I do now have time to watch Vision Quest. I'm going to try to watch it within the next week. I will try to watch it within the next week, and I will report back to you on next week's show. So I know you're listening to this. If you hear it, you can put it in your comment. Hey, how was Vision Quest? Remind me. I'll talk about it next week. If I do indeed watch it within the next 7 days, which I'm almost guaranteed to do. Do not you, but just anyone, do not give me a laundry list of movies to watch because I feel obligated to watch them, and then I will feel so overwhelmed with options. So don't do that, but like one-off movie requests, you can feel free to give me those, and I'll be like, okay, I'll check this out. If you think I might like it, or you think I may have seen it before or whatever. Not some random-ass movie that it's like, I don't know. Vision Quest is pretty fucking random, but I'll give it a shot because it's an 80s movie, excuse me. And I've never seen it before, and I've heard about it, so I'll watch it. Anyway, so Chris's question was from YouTube, his first question. He said, hey, Graham, hope you're doing well and having a fantastic week. My first question, if you could go back in time to attend 5 huge wrestling shows, which shows would that be? For me, it would be WrestleMania 17, Bash at the Beach 1996, Money in the Bank 2011, WrestleMania 10, and WrestleMania 30. All of them having either an incredible atmosphere or moments that live on in the modern wrestling history. What are your 5 picks? That's a great question. I feel like I've answered this before, but I'll go at it again. 2 of my same events that would be the same as yours would be Money in the Bank 2011 would be my far and away number 1. I've always been that's been my favorite wrestling show of all time. I just fucking love the show. I've rewatched it a million times. I've been back to that. I've been to that arena before, in the Allstate Arena for Money in the Bank in 2018. I went there twice for that, and then for TakeOver the night before. And that was like an impromptu trip that I made, back in 2018. And it was a great trip. I love Chicago. It's a great city. And it was just a fun time. The arena itself is nothing great. It's nothing special, but just being there in the same arena that event happened in back in 2011 was really special. So, and that was great, but nothing will ever match the electricity of Money in the Bank 2011. So, Money in the Bank 2011 is my number 1, in no particular order, by the way. But WrestleMania 17, as with yours, is also on my list. Just the greatest wrestling show of all time to a lot of people. I feel like being there would have been amazing. What was the Astrodome? Was it the Astrodome? I forget the name of the arena in Texas. So those 2. My other 3 picks, I almost put down Bash at the Beach or an NXT show. Like one of the early NXT shows, like Arrival, which the 10-year anniversary was yesterday, by the way. Great show. Like, I was at Brooklyn. Like, a lot of the shows you would think I would say, I was actually in attendance for. Like, the Hardy Boys return, I was there for that one. That maybe the night after WrestleMania in 2012, just being there for the Brock return, that's still one of my favorite reactions to this day. That, or, like, again, a lot of the NXT shows that I would have said, like the Brooklyn shows, or, what else would it have been? Maybe our Evolution, that TakeOver show, or TakeOver London, I guess those. But like the other ones, like even TakeOver New York, that's probably to me the greatest TakeOver of all time. I was at that one as well. So it's hard to say an NXT show, but that would be an honorable mention, by the way. But for my top 5, Money in the Bank 2011, WrestleMania 17, Canadian Stampede 97, for the exact reason that you mentioned. I wasn't even watching wrestling back then, but the atmosphere in that arena was just unparalleled. And I've gone back and watched that show a few times. It's a great show. That main event is awesome. Again, for the atmosphere alone, Canadian Stampede 97, and just the fact it was a great show. Survivor Series 2000. By the way, these remaining, only one of these matches, only one of these shows, rather, I was actually a fan for. Money in the Bank 2011. The other 4, I was not watching wrestling during. But yeah, Canadian Stampede 97, WrestleMania 17, Money in the Bank 2011, Survivor Series 2002. Just an amazing show. Again, one of my favorite shows that I was not watching for, that I was not watching wrestling for. I was not watching wrestling until years later, but I fucking love O2 Survivor Series. It's a great show. MSG's an amazing arena, so I would put that one on the list. And then One Night Stand, ECW One Night Stand 2005. Again, great show. Hammerstein Ballroom, amazing atmosphere. And I'm not even the biggest ECW fan, but that show is just so much fucking fun. So definitely that one as well. His second question, buy or sell on the better Mick Foley Hell in a Cell match, King of the Ring 1998 or No Way Out 2000. King of the Ring 1998 is my pick, as it holds up beautifully even today, and it still shocks me how some of the stuff that happened in that match wasn't even scripted, and everything was pretty much improvised on the spot after the throw off the cell. What is your pick? Probably that one as well. I mean, both matches are great. Honestly, I feel like the No Way Out match is the better actual match. And I'm not even saying from a wrestling standpoint, because that was a hardcore fest as well, lots of fucking hardcore shit and disgusting stuff and whatever. But I just feel like that's a better match. The King of the Ring 98 match isn't really much of a match. I would call it, and I've always said this, it's more of a spectacle. It has a lot of memorable spots, but there's a lot of dead time in between. A lot of that is storytelling and the reactions and the commentators reacting to what they just saw, McFoley's facial expressions and stuff like that, them taking Foley out, but then he comes back in. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, but that's not to disrespect the match or take away from how great it is. That is still one of the all-time biggest matches in wrestling history, and people still talk about it to this day, obviously, over 25 years later. So, I would probably go that one, though. I feel like if the No Way Out match, the thing with the No Way Out match, that also made Triple H. That is also very important to point out. Those matches with Mick Foley at the Royal Rumble, and specifically the No Way Out match, to me, really cemented Triple H as a star in 2000. So if you take away that match, it does change the course of wrestling history, but I feel like if you really had to choose, that Hell in the Cell match doesn't really change anything, I don't know. But at the same time, though, Mick Foley was an upper mid-card guy until that match. After that, he was a full-on ready to become WWE champion. People love Mick Foley. He had a great career from 96 to 98. But it was after that match that people were really I think anyway. Again, that was kind of his breakout performance to people. That he can be a main event guy, that he can withstand punishment, tell a great story, blah, blah, blah. So I'd have to go buy in that one. Sell on No Way Out 2000. His next question, what type of music are you into and who are your favorite bands/artists? I'm mostly into rock music. At this point, I used to download all the music on my phone, my iPhone, iTunes library, whatever. Alexis got me into Spotify a few years ago, so I've been using that ever since, and it's pretty much the same music. But the funny thing is, I'm such a fucking mark. A lot of my music taste spans from wrestling, not just theme songs. I'm not blasting theme songs all day, although I'll do that once in a while, depending on the song. A lot of his former video package songs, pay-per-view theme songs, and if it's not those songs specifically, it's songs from bands that did that sort of stuff. Bands like Skillet, even Jericho's band Fozzy. Say what you will about Jericho, but I think Fozzy's a great band. They're just terrific. I'm a Fozzy fan. I've liked Breaking Benjamin. I'm trying to think what else. Nickelback, listen, they get a lot of fucking hate. Nickelback's awful, blah, blah, blah. I like Nickelback. I've liked a lot of their music. From the past to modern day, maybe not in the last couple of years, but songs they were doing up until 5-10 years ago. So Nickelback as well. A lot of that is rock music, though. I will occasionally like some stuff I hear on the radio and then put it in my iTunes or my Spotify playlist at this point. But a lot of it is rock music for bands I just mentioned. So Fozzy, Nickelback, Breaking Benjamin, 3 Days Grace is another one. I've never been to one of their concerts. I wanted to go to one of their concerts of Breaking Benjamin. I just haven't had a chance yet. But they're fantastic. Yeah, I feel like it's constantly changing, but those are like the top few artists and bands that I listen to. Skillet, I think I mentioned as well. His next question. I've never really been too keen on Eddie Edwards. While he is very talented in the ring, I find his heel character work to be very cringy and grating. On top of that, I think his promos aren't anything to write home about. I get that some fans think that he plays the annoying heel well, but I feel he works much better as a babyface than he does as a heel. What about you? I like Eddie Edwards. He's a great competitor. He's never really stood out character-wise, aside from, like, I feel like in 2018 when he started doing, like, the crazy Eddie Edwards gimmick, that was, like, the best character work he had done up to that point, because prior to that point, he was just a wrestler's wrestling guy. So, yeah, I mean, I think as a heel, he's fine. I think turning heel a couple of years ago was for the best, because he had not really been a heel full-time prior to, like, the Ring of Honor stuff they were doing with that faction. I forgot the name of it. Honor No More. And yeah, he's not the best heel, but listen, he had been a babyface for so long, it was time for something new. And he will go back to being a babyface at some point. But when he turned heel, it was necessary timing. It worked out well. And he is a better babyface. People like him as a babyface. He's a great underdog. So I would agree with that. But Eddie Edwards is great. I actually met Eddie Edwards once. I mean, I could easily say like a WrestleCon, but it was actually at in Salem, Mass. I was in there for the day before Halloween. I was visiting with family and friends, and we went to a restaurant or something, and we were coming back, because I went to school in the area. I didn't go to school in Salem, but I went to college nearby at Endicott, which is in Beverly, which is like fucking 10 minutes away. So we were not there. I was there on Halloween the next day anyway, but I went there with friends and family, like I said, the night before, and we were coming back from dinner. We were taking the train back, and I'm at the train station. There's like no one fucking there. And I look around and I'm like, holy shit, that's Eddie Edwards. And at this point, this was like almost 10 years ago, like late 2015. He was in Impact at this point. This was before he won the TNA World title for the first time. He was just one half of the Wolves back then. But I recognized him immediately and got a picture with him. And it's still up somewhere. But him and Alicia Edwards, his wife, his real life wife, obviously. Them two and like a friend was there as well. Didn't take a picture with a friend, but I took a picture with them because it was cool and he was really nice. And I interviewed him years later and he remembered that, which was cool. So yeah, I'm an Eddie Edwards guy, and I like him more as a babyface as well than I do as a heel. I agree. His last question here from YouTube: which of the no quarter catch crew has a higher ceiling on the main roster? Of the four, I gotta go Charlie Dempsey. Miles Bourne is good. He's still inexperienced. I don't know if he has the highest ceiling, but I would probably go Dempsey though, because Gulak is, done on the main roster. He's just kind of there to help elevate people. And then Damon Kemp is also really good. I think it'd be neck and neck with him and Dempsey. But Dempsey, being Regal's son, he needs more development character-wise, but the guy's just fucking great. Like, he looks like a badass, I think. I don't know if you're a big fan of him. I know you've talked about how you're not a big fan of the no quarter catch crew, but I really like Regal's kid. He just won the Heritage Cup Championship last night. A completely pointless title, obviously, but I think not only the fact that he's Regal's son, but the guy can go in the ring. He looks like a fucking tough SOB. And they don't really have a lot of people like him on the main roster. They never called up Timothy Thatcher. I feel like he is kind of like the modern day. I mean, Timothy Thatcher was there a couple of years ago. I feel like he is a younger Timothy Thatcher for NXT. And hopefully at some point he does end up on the main roster. How well he'll do, I don't know. You said higher ceiling. I feel like none of them will really go all that far on the main roster. But Dempsey probably, if not Damon Kemp, because he can talk. He's a good worker. He's got that legitimate Olympic background, so maybe even Damon Kemp, but I'm biased towards Regal. So I'm going to go for Regal's son, Charlie Dempsey. Brandon A., his first question here from YouTube, he says, what's up, GSM? A few questions this week. And he said, oh yeah, my apologies to Alexis for getting her name wrong a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was pretty funny that she got me back by calling me Brendan. Yeah, she fucking does that, so I apologize on her behalf, but that was pretty funny. Your first question was, last week you said you enjoyed football and basketball on some level, albeit much less than wrestling. The Super Bowl and the NBA All-Star Weekend both happened earlier this month. I'm guessing that you go to WrestleMania not only for enjoyment, but partially for work as well. My question is this. If someone were to pay for you to go to the Super Bowl and all the festivities around it, as well as all of the NBA All-Star Weekend events, would you go if it was contingent on you not going to WrestleMania that year? This would include your accommodations, transportation, per diem for food and shopping, and admissions. This would only be for 1 year. You can resume going to WrestleMania the year after. Or you do give it up and still go to Mania. Think of the year as random, not related to specific things going on in your life. The decision would be just about your temperament and how much you mind missing WrestleMania. That's an excellent question. An excellent question. The answer is yes, I would definitely miss Mania to go to the Super Bowl or NBA All-Star Weekend. Probably the Super Bowl. I like basketball more, like I said last week. But, like, you can... I think it's more... I mean, I think of this part of it as well. I feel like it'd be more fun and impressive to say, hey, I went to a Super Bowl, let alone for fucking free, as opposed to like, hey, I went to NBA All-Star Weekend, which I feel like would be more fun to watch the actual game. But the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl. Again, I think I like football. I find it less interesting to watch than basketball. But the Super Bowl, I mean, the game earlier this month, which I did watch, was actually great. That's probably one of the best Super Bowl games I've seen in a long time. And they've had some pretty good games in the last few years, but I feel like that was a great game, especially going into overtime, the second time ever that's ever happened, I believe, at the Super Bowl, which is crazy. Look at me spitting out fucking football facts, but yeah, definitely the Super Bowl. I mean, it's funny you say that because I was watching the game earlier this month and I'm thinking, you know what? It would be cool to cross off the bucket list, even though this has never been on my bucket list and it'll never happen. It would be cool to go to a Super Bowl. Just to say that I've been there, and if only for the atmosphere. It's definitely fucking crazy, but you know what? Just for the atmosphere alone, it would be cool one day to go to a Super Bowl. So you're offering me that opportunity? The answer is yes. The only drawback is, you're right, I do go for WrestleMania. I go to WrestleMania at this point largely for work. It's actually more so for work than for enjoyment, although I enjoy it as well, obviously. So if it was okay on that front, like if it's okay that I don't go to Mania, someone else goes for me or something else, and someone else gets that coverage and shit for me, and then I can go to the Super Bowl instead. Like, for example, I guess you could, let's put it in these terms. If someone that usually goes to the Super Bowl was also a wrestling fan, I guess that's also important, were to switch with me for a year, I took their spot at the Super Bowl, and they took my spot at WrestleMania. I guess I'm not a big football guy, so any coverage I do would not be great or nearly as in detail or as in depth as the person that would typically do the Super Bowl. But let's say Bleacher Report wanted me to go to the Super Bowl because the guy got sick and they're going to send that guy to WrestleMania instead. The answer would be yes. Now, I would also say this, I would pick a year to do that where the card for Mania is not looking overly appealing. So if this was like, I mean, the last couple of years, Mania's been pretty good. If this was like Mania 34 in 2018, which I did not go to, that was the only Mania aside from the COVID Mania since 2017 that I have not been to. My first two as a fan were 2017 and 2019. 2018 I did not go to. Obviously not in 2021 or 2020, but I did go in 2021, 2022, and 2023, and I will be there this year as well. So the only WrestleMania with fans that I have not been to in the past 6-7 years was 2018, and I'm glad I didn't because that Mania wasn't all that great anyway. There really wasn't a lot that happened in that Mania that I regret missing or not being there for. The post-WrestleMania Raw was much better than the Mania itself, I would say. So yeah, I would probably say that. I don't know if it depends on the year, though. The thing is that the Super Bowl happens in February. It happens before WrestleMania. So if I have a good idea of what's going to happen at WrestleMania a couple months ahead of time, and I could say, listen, I'm not going to really want to go this year, let's go to the Super Bowl instead, then I would do that. I'm spending way too long on this question, but I thought it was a great question. The answer is definitely yes. That's not even like a hard question. It's a great question because it's an easy answer. The answer is yes. I would go to the Super Bowl over WrestleMania because I've been to enough WrestleManias. I could take one off. I mean, this year's Mania looks great, and it's going to be a fun time. But, I wouldn't mind going to a Super Bowl if only once. Your next question, the total solar eclipse is happening on April 8th, the day after WrestleMania. I mean, speaking of what you said, I assume you will have WrestleMania-related travel plans, which would take you out of the path of totality. If I am wrong about that, do you have any plans on going further west to see it, or could you care less, even if you were in the path of totality? I have honestly no idea what you're talking about with this path of totality stuff. I know about solar eclipses and stuff like that. The answer is no, I would not go further west for it. If you mean by further west, like going outside of my house and going like an extra 10 to 30 feet to see whatever this is, the solar eclipse, then yes. If you mean like traveling like further west than the country to go see it, the answer is no. But I would go outside and check it out if I were to remember for sure. But you're right, though. I will be, if you said the day after WrestleMania, I will probably still be in Philly at that point at the Raw. So I will not be seeing the post-WrestleMania Raw. And hopefully it's not garbage this year. like it was last year. But yeah, I will not probably see it. I will be in Philly for Mania. I will be in that building for most of the night for Raw, so I will not be able to see it. Unless I could see it. If I walk outside of the arena and it's still going on at 11 p.m. at night Eastern time, then sure, I'll probably take a gander if I remember. But I mean, it's not that I couldn't care less. It's not really something I think of, or it's really something at my forefront. The weird thing is I don't really think about that shit, but I think about, oh, it's Leap Day. This is cool. Like, I don't know. I'm a weird person. Your next question, another really, really good question here. Which feud from 2011 do you prefer? John Cena versus CM Punk or Randy Orton versus Christian? I know how much you love the Money in the Bank main event, but I don't know if you feel like that much alone completely overtakes the other rivalry. You know what? You are right. It is Orton and Christian for me. I have always said that is one of, if not my favorite feud in WWE history. Now, that's so fucking random. I mean, I've only been watching since 2008, so spare me. But, you know, Jericho and Shawn Michaels was also amazing from 2008 as well. That was really what kind of helped me get into wrestling that year. But that Orton, man, that Orton-Christian feud was just so fucking good. That's the only thing, now that you mention that, I wish I had mentioned that to Randy. I did mention, like, it was his match with Regal in 2008 that literally got me into wrestling in 2008. But I did not mention that my favorite feud of all time, if I ever get an opportunity to meet him or interview him again, I'll mention it. But my favorite feud of all time is him and Christian from 2011. Man, those matches were just so fucking good. I have told Christian that, and we talked extensively about it when I met him in person about 5-6 years ago. 7 years ago at this point, which is nuts. I just love that fucking feud. I'm a big Christian mark. Orton's great. Their matches were awesome. Christian got buried a lot of the time, and he only held the world title for a month and 2 days prior to that point. But you know what? The matches were so good that I could really care less. I could not care less because the matches were just so good. So, yeah, I got to go Orton and Christian was my favorite feud because Cena and Punk, the feud's amazing. Also one of my favorite feuds of all time. The Summer of Punk was great, but I feel like that was more about Punk than it was Cena. Like, I don't know, that Summer of Punk feud was amazing, and they went back to it down the road. But I feel like Orton and Christian went on longer. The matches were, I don't want to say consistently better because they weren't. I mean, they were just as good as Cena and Punk. But I don't know. I got to go. It's something about that Orton and Christian feud, man. I got to go that one. Maybe just because the fact it lasted longer. But I think Orton and Christian is one of my favorite feuds of all time. So I got to go that one over Cena and Punk from 2011. Your last question here. I believe Bianca Belair will face Tiffany Stratton at WrestleMania. That match has the potential to be an absolute banger. Do you think fans could get behind a Bianca Belair winning streak if and only if every match she has at WrestleMania is a great match? No duds whatsoever. As great as Taker's streak was, it had plenty of terrible or just okay matches. If Bianca was to deliver year after year, do you think the fans would still turn on her WrestleMania match if they started pushing a streak storyline? Of course. It's wrestling fans. Even if the matches are great, people are already turning on her. They turned on her last year. The matches, every match she's had at Mania on the main card so far have been great. Every match. The Sasha match, the Becky match, and the Asuka match. But she was champion last year for a fucking year when she beat Asuka. She should not have beaten Asuka on that show. Asuka should have won the title on that show. And I'm not booing Bianca. I love Bianca, but you know, people may not understand, like, okay, I didn't really want Bianca to win, but whatever. They're probably just like, boo, you've been champion for too long. I'm going to fucking boo you. Like, that's just how people are. So yeah, I feel like even if she has great matches every single year, people will still turn on her because some people don't care about the work rate and shit like that. They just care about, boo, my favorite is not winning, or boo, you win too much. You're the John Cena of the women's division, which is technically true to a certain extent. I'm not denying that. But like, if the character is still interesting, I'm okay with it. Like, nothing against Bianca, but if it gets to a point where she's still a babyface in a couple years, I mean, I'm not going to really give a fuck about her at that point because it's like, and that's not being fickle. It's not like, oh, boo, like I hate Bianca. It's more like it's time for a change. She's been doing the same thing for so long now. She did show a different side of her character last year during the Charlotte stuff, and then Charlotte got hurt and never really went anywhere. But she's been doing the same EST character for like the last 5 years. She's got to switch it up at some point. So it's not really about her like not being good or not having good matches. It's more about the character. So if she's constantly winning a la Cena, who was fucking boring after a while because he never changed up his character, then yeah, people will boo, regardless of how good the matches are. But I like the idea of Bianca having her own streak. The problem with that is I agree. I think she will face Tiffany at Mania. I've been saying that for a month and a half now. But the thing with that, though, is I really want Tiffany to win. Now, she doesn't need to. Tiffany won't be buried if she loses. But I do think it'll be a case of, Bianca, if she beats her, I don't really think she needs it. Tiffany would benefit more. And then if she does, she ends the streak. So, I don't really care. If they keep the streak going, then cool. If they have Tiffany win, even better. So, I guess we'll see. But, I don't know. I think people will turn on her regardless because that's just how wrestling fans are. The Undertaker was different because The Undertaker was in the business for a long fucking time and already a legend by the time people started realizing, hey, he's undefeated at WrestleMania. Bianca's not quite at that point yet, and she hasn't reached that status of people will boo her, will not boo her if she starts winning every year. It's not an attraction yet as the streak for Bianca. It's just not at that level, not even remotely close. So people will boo. But maybe at some point they can get her to that level and they turn her heel and she boasts about being undefeated in Mania. I think that would work well for her. No L from Facebook. We gotta. I can't spend too much time on each question as I have been, just because we gotta wrap it up here within the next 30 minutes. But no L from Facebook. Their first question was, "Can you imagine the heat on Dom?" You wrote Don, so I'm thinking Don Callis. What the fuck are you talking about? But I think you mean Dom. From Dominic Mysterio on Dominic Mysterio from the fans if he won this year's Money in the Bank, like nuclear heat right there. Yeah, I could see that. Dominic Mysterio should not be Mr. Money in the Bank. I'm sorry. I like Dominic. The guy's improved a lot. I guess he could cash it in on a mid-card title. Don't fucking waste that on Dominic. We also just saw the briefcase in it with the member of the Judgment Day for the past fucking year with Damian Priest. We do not need to see that again. The Judgment Day should be pretty much over by the end of this year anyway, I would say. The Judgment Day are great, but at some point we have to move on. So, I would not put the briefcase on Dom. I'd much rather see it on someone like an LA Knight, or someone that does have real main event potential, like Damian Priest. Maybe Dom can be a world champion at some point, but again, the Judgment Day thing, we just fucking saw it. We just saw it in the past year, so no thanks. It would get a lot of heat, though, if they did do it. Their second question, out of these three women's wrestlers, who do you see being the biggest star when all is said and done? Tiffany Stratton, Cora Jade, or Roxanne Perez for their respective careers? Another good question. I gotta go Tiffany. I think if I had to rank them, probably Tiffany, Roxanne, then Cora. Although I'm a fan of all three, I think Cora isn't remotely as good in the ring as either Roxanne or Tiffany, and Tiffany's just a complete package. Not that Roxanne isn't. Roxanne is, to me, this generation's, and it's only been 10 years, but this generation's AJ Lee. And a much better worker than AJ was, too. AJ was a really good wrestler, but I feel like Roxanne's even better. AJ didn't have a lot of, amazing matches. Roxanne, at only 22 or something, has already had a lot of great matches in her WWE career with a variety of people, including Cora and including with Tiffany. But I gotta go Tiffany. I just feel like she's already on the main roster for a reason. She can talk now. The character stuff is getting better. She's already connected with the audience pretty fucking quickly. She's a great heel. She'll be a good babyface at some point, I think. She can do media. I've interviewed her a few times, and she's already improved on that front as well. And she's just really good in the ring. So I just feel like she also just looks like someone they would market. She looks like a Barbie doll, and it's not like, oh, she looks like that, but she's fucking terrible. No, she can go. Tiffany's great. So, and then again, Roxanne's great, and Roxanne will be very successful, I think, in WWE. But I just think Tiffany will go that much further. I don't know if Roxanne will ever main event a WrestleMania. I could totally see Tiffany main eventing a Mania within the next couple of years with someone like a Charlotte or a Becky, Bianca, whatever. Roxanne, I'm not too sure about, but I do think Tiffany is just, she would really have to get herself canceled in order to not be successful in this company. Christopher L. from Facebook, their first question was, in the past, you have been the first person to admit you weren't a Kiana James fan. I will admit that she isn't the best, most smooth wrestler or the best character, and I think Izzy Dame is a waste of TV time as a character, but I also think with enough seasoning, she can be molded into a solid hand in the ring. Why do you not like Kiana James? I don't think Kiana James is bad. I just don't think she's that great, and she has improved. She certainly has improved. I just feel like of all the women they have right now in NXT, there is just so many more women that interest me over Kiana James. I just don't really understand the hype. I don't, because I haven't really seen her have one breakout great match. She's had some good matches, but no great matches. The character stuff I think is cringy. Oh, I'm a businesswoman. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know. It's something different, I guess, but I just hate NXT's character-centric bullshit sometimes. Everyone has to have a character. It's not as bad now as it was a couple of years ago, but I don't know. I guess if she didn't have a character, she'd be even less interesting, but I'm just not a Kiana James guy. For as much as they push her, she's just not all that interesting. Just the level of push that she gets does not match how good she is, in my opinion. With more seasoning, can she be better? Yeah. I don't think Kiana James is bad. Like I said, I just don't think she's all that great. And I just don't think she's worthy of the push that she's getting. The Izzy Dame stuff I just don't get. She doesn't really interest me either. She's okay. I don't really know where their push is going either. I said this in my NXT review last night, but like, they're pushing them pretty hard. But for what though? Are they going to get a tag team title opportunity? Like, why are they being pushed? I don't get it. And like, again, for all the other women they have in that division, I think Lyra's improved a lot more. Lyra has wrestling experience, whereas Kiana James does not, I don't think, as much as Lyra anyway. But I find Lyra interesting. I find Kalani Jordan interesting. I think she has a lot of potential. Even Sol Ruka, who's on her way back to NXT TV. I think she's really, really good. She's far more impressive and interesting to me than Kiana James. And she doesn't even really have much of a character. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more women they could be doing more with than Kiana James, who just, again, doesn't really interest me. His next question, there is a rumor that the Intercontinental Championship will be defended in a 7-man ladder match at WrestleMania, which I think is a win-win situation as it takes the belt off of Gunther, assuming Gunther loses, so Gunther can move on to bigger and better things, and Gunther does not have to look weak in defeat. My question is, what are your all-time favorite ladder matches, as not just in WWE, but in the 16 years you've been watching or you've been a fan of professional wrestling? The ladder match is probably my favorite stipulation match. The problem with answering this question is there's been so many fucking ladder matches in all of these companies in the past 16 years, it's honestly hard to remember what my favorites would be. Like, the biggest ones that come to mind are the Money in the Bank ladder matches. Like, I love the Money in the Bank ladder matches. Those I can remember, and those really stand out. But both WWE and AEW, they do what feels like 5 ladder matches a year, if not more than that. And they're all great, but when they're all great, none of them are really all that special. That's the problem. But like some few that come to mind, as far as the Money in the Bank ladder matches go in the time that I've been watching wrestling, WrestleMania 24, I don't know if that would count because I technically wasn't watching wrestling at that point, but that ladder match I love. The Money in the Bank ladder match in 2016, I think it was only 6 people, but I really, really, really like that one. There's been some other great ones, but that one especially I really enjoyed. That entire event is great. Christian and Del Rio for the World Heavyweight Championship from Money in the Bank, from Extreme Rules, 2011. That was where Christian won his first World Heavyweight Championship. A great match, and also just being Christian's first world title win, that match is really special to me. Edge celebrating with him, helping him win. That was awesome. So, that was back when they weren't doing ladder matches every fucking month. So, that would be one, but that's probably why as well. The random one they did at WrestleMania 31 for the Intercontinental Championship, I really liked as well. They did it again at WrestleMania 32, and that was a good match, but I liked the one at WrestleMania 31 more with Bryan winning and the talent they had involved. So Mania 31. TakeOver New Orleans, where they crowned the inaugural NXT North American Champion. Adam Cole won that one, but they had a lot of people who weren't even there anymore. But him, EC3, Lars Sullivan, Velveteen Dream, who was the other? Ricochet, and maybe one other person, but I think it was Killian Dane. Lars Sullivan, Adam Cole. I don't know how I remember this, but Velveteen Dream, EC3, and Ricochet, I think. I believe those were the 6 that were in there. But a fantastic match, and I love that entire show. That entire show is amazing, but that match was outstanding. And it also featured the debuts of EC3 and Ricochet, their in-ring debuts for the NXT brand. But also Shawn Michaels and Jericho, their ladder match from No Mercy 08. Not a match I watched live, because I wasn't watching the live pay-per-views at that point, but I've gone back and watched it, and it is every bit as good as Jericho talks about and Shawn Michaels has talked about. Just an amazing match. So yeah, Jericho and Shawn Michaels from No Mercy 08 as well for the World Heavyweight Championship. I'm sure there's more that I'm just not remembering, but those are the ones that come to mind. And there's been plenty of great ones in AEW as well, but the WWE ones stand out to me more. Their next question: if you could fantasy book past and present superstars in dream matches, which ones would you pick? Mine would be Bret Hart versus Kurt Angle, and this is coming from Chris. Excuse me. Bryan Danielson versus Dean Malenko, Gunther versus Vader, Bam Bam Bigelow versus Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton versus Kurt Hennig, Randy Savage versus Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre versus Rick Rude, and many others. What would you book? I mean, I don't like answering these sort of questions because there's just a million of them. Like, I don't know, Stone Cold Steve Austin and John Cena, or Hulk Hogan and John Cena, or something like that. Randy Orton and fucking Randy Savage would be sick. Or CM Punk and Randy Savage, I think would be cool. Bret Hart and Bryan Danielson, or Bret Hart and Kurt, which is what you mentioned. Amazing match. Gunther and Vader would be sick. Brock and Vader would be sick. I mean, there's a million that come to mind, but those are the ones that really come to mind, the ones that I just mentioned. His next question, when he finally hangs up his boots, what would you say is the legacy of Baron Corbin? I always saw him as a great athlete for a guy his size, but someone who badly lacked in the charisma and personality department, the tools most needed to be a star. When he got called up from NXT, he was criticized as being pushed too hard, too soon, despite not showing much character, and after he failed his cash-in, he was basically directionless for months until he became the Raw GM, and it resulted in some of the worst television in the history of Raw, which is true, by the way. After that, they tried to make him a main eventer with his feud with Seth Rollins, and that was a dud for 3 months. Also true. It wasn't until he went back to NXT that he found a new lease on life, and he's become a totally new character and has put out some of the best matches of his career and has had a believable tag team run with Braun Breaker. So how do you view Corbin's legacy at the end of the day? I mean, Corbin, I think, will definitely go into the WWE Hall of Fame. He's been around long enough. He's had enough accomplishments between winning Money in the Bank, King of the Ring, the United States Championship, the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, debuting in that and winning it, being Raw GM for a while, now NXT Tag Team Champion. I'm a big Corbin guy. I think Corbin's great. I think Corbin's always been very underrated in the ring. You're right, the character stuff, it's not really his fault, but I think, part of it is he is partially to blame because he's not the most dynamic, character or person. But I say that at the same time, he's played a variety of characters. The problem is, he's dynamic, but none of those characters were really overly good. I think early Lone Wolf Corbin was great. NXT Corbin I fucking loved. And current NXT Corbin's great too, but OG Corbin, a lot of people didn't like it. It would have gotten old after a while, but that Lone Wolf Corbin where he was picking on indie people by the end of his run there was fucking funny. That Corbin I really enjoyed. And they just kind of botched him on the main roster after that. He had a pretty decent main roster run early on, but after the cash-in, and I was happy he won Money in the Bank, but the cash-in was terrible. They had no plans for him after that. He lost a lot of credibility there, and he never really recovered. The Raw GM stuff was a good, he tried to make the most of it, but the Constable Corbin stuff fucking sucked. Raw in 2018 was just awful. For the second half of it, it was just really fucking bad. And then even the King of the Ring stuff, he was King Corbin for way too fucking long. And it was just not good. He was having decent matches, but, the feud with Roman was fucking terrible, dude. That was just terrible. That was awful. So that, and then, he was broke-ass Corbin. Bum-ass Corbin was great. That was great. That was short-lived, but it was great. And then they made him Happy Corbin, and that sucked. And they tried to repackage him again as Baron Corbin earlier last year with JBL, and I thought that had potential, and that sucked, because the booking didn't really help him at all. So, I don't know, man. With Baron Corbin, he's just had a lot of bad luck, I think. But at the end of the day, he will be remembered as someone, I don't know who could have been bigger, but I think more people will remember him as, for the bad gimmicks than the good. But Corbin deserves more credit than that. Because, again, he's had a lot of accomplishments, but he's also just really good, I think, as well. In the ring, and he's proven he can talk, and he's having fun right now in NXT, and hopefully at some point when he is back on the main roster, he can bring what he's doing right now in NXT to the main roster. That's what I would like to see. This current Corbin on the main roster. And not that King Corbin bullshit or what he was fucking doing before he left for NXT where he was jobbing to everyone. What a fucking waste. And people don't give a fuck about Corbin, but if you give them a reason to care about him with the right booking and the right character, I think he could do well. And that's what we're currently seeing in NXT. So I can't really speak to exactly what his legacy is, but I do think he can be remembered a bit more fondly if he were to be booked better on the main roster, at least in my opinion. Greg L. from Facebook, do you believe The Rock should be at WrestleMania or stay out of it? No, I think The Rock WrestleMania will absolutely feature The Rock. We're probably getting Cody versus The Rock. I don't really want The Rock to wrestle because I don't want Cody pulling double duty, but it's probably happening, so whatever. But no, The Rock should absolutely be at Mania. I don't want him facing Roman Reigns this year, obviously, as I've said many times. But him facing Cody, okay. And, as far as being there, he's obviously going to be there, so I have no issue with that. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check out his content, his great work. His first question was, Sting's last match is this Sunday. Given the messy build, what are the chances it ends with a whimper instead of a bang? No, I think they'll do it right. The build has been a bit all over the place, but, I think the match will be good. I don't know if he wins or loses. We talked about that last week. I don't know. But, he'll probably lose, I think. But I think the atmosphere alone will make that special. Having some of his friends there, having it be in North Carolina, it being the main event, I think that stuff alone will make it more of a bang than a whimper. It could go out with a whimper. It's very possible. The match couldn't really, it may not be all that good. It may be a dull match, who knows, but Still, I think it will be a fun match, and the atmosphere alone will make it a special occasion. So I think it will be more of a bang than a whimper, but anything can happen. Your second question, what titles do you see changing hands at AEW Revolution and why? I think Garcia could beat Christian for the TNT title. That's my bold pick going into that pay-per-view. I don't see the World Championship changing hands. I could see the tag titles changing hands, like I said. I could see those totally changing hands. I don't think Deonna beats Tony. I don't think the TBS Championship is being defended. It could be, but I think Julia might still be hurt, so I don't know. What other titles are there? The International Championship, that's totally changing hands. It kind of fucking has to. If Orange Cassidy beats Roderick, just take the Undisputed Kingdom and throw it away. I mean, you might as well do that anyway, but if he were to lose, what a fucking waste. So Roddy kind of has to beat Orange Cassidy. So I'm going to say the tag titles change hands, the TNT title changes hands, and the International Championship changes hands as well. Not the Continental Crown Championship. I think that stays in Eddie Kingston. His third question, non-wrestling related, but Dune Part 2 is coming out this weekend. Are you planning on watching it at all? If so, what are your thoughts in Part 1? Alexis and I, so it's been on my watch list for years, literally years. And Alexis downloaded it on Netflix to watch in the plane to Tampa for Royal Rumble weekend a few months ago, for last month. We finally watched it on the way there, or attempted to. I was already fucking tired because I had 2.5 hours of sleep. I was falling asleep during the movie. I'm sorry. If it was more interesting, I probably wouldn't have fallen asleep. But I was falling asleep and man, this is fucking boring. It's just really fucking boring. And I tried. We finished it, the remaining hour and a half of it when we got back, and it didn't change my mind. I'm definitely in the minority here. I did not like Dune 1 at all. Dune 1 was just fucking boring. I did not like it whatsoever. I will go see Part 2, because I've heard good things. I'm sure it is better than Part 1. I would like to see what the hype is about. I saw the first one. I'll watch the second one, probably for $5 on a Tuesday, but whatever. So I am planning on seeing it. When, I don't know, but I am planning on seeing it. But yeah, Part 1 was just, I thought it was bad. I thought it sucked, but that's just me. If you liked it, more power to you. But I think a lot of people liked it. I just was fucking bored by it, but that's just me. At Iwagu91, first question from them. What are the odds that Will Ospreay will leave the Don Callis family? Very high. I think they'll do the Takeshita match, and then he'll leave right afterward, because why the fuck would he stay in that dumbass group? I like the Don Callis family, but I feel like it's more of a hindrance to someone like a Will Ospreay than a help. He should be a babyface. People will want to cheer him. Have him break away from them. Maybe he feuds with them. I don't know. Get him away from the Don Callis family, please. So that's what I would say. His second question. Do you think that Eddie Kingston and Bryan Danielson will end their feud this Sunday? I do. I'm surprised it's even gone on this long. I mean, we've seen enough matches between them where I don't really think we needed a fourth or fifth match. But the match will be great. Whatever. It gets both guys on the show. I do think Eddie Kingston wins, as he should. Do you think that The Undertaker should have retired in 2012? I do, actually. I do. I think the end of an era match should have been the end of everyone's career involved. Shawn Michaels should not have wrestled again. Triple H did not need to wrestle again. The Undertaker should have ended it. That wouldn't have made him... Was that 20-0? Was he 19-0? That I think he might have been 20-0. Yeah, that made him 20-0. That did make him 20-0, because the Punk match made him 21-0. And then he lost at WrestleMania 30. So, yeah, I think he should have retired at 20-0. I think they should have kept the streak intact. The Punk match was great, but it didn't need to happen. And then everything that happened after that with Taker was just completely unnecessary. The 30 match happened, which was awful. The Bray Wyatt match was good, but didn't need to happen. The Shane match was not good. The Roman match was terrible. The Cena match was a squash. And the Styles match was great at WrestleMania 36. But, I feel like he absolutely should have retired with that end of an era match, because that was the last, great match, I feel like. The best match he's had at me, even more than the Punk match or the Styles match to me, the end of an era match was better. Just because I think of the spectacle of it, the Hell in the Cell, the build, and that final visual alone was worth it. So that final visual alone should have been the end of all of their runs in WWE in the ring. But it wasn't. Last question from at Iwagu91. Is AJ Styles back to being a heel now? Yeah, I think he was a tweener for a while, but he's definitely back to being a heel. I mean, that attack was not a fucking tweener babyface thing to do. At Elimination Chamber, you are a fucking hater to fly all the way to Australia just to cost this man an opportunity at the world title at Mania. You have to be a real fucking hater to do that. He didn't even cost him the qualifier. He waited until he was in Australia, until he was in the match itself, to cost him that win. Like, what a fucking hater AJ Styles is. So, he's definitely back to being a heel now, I would say. At noob_n_co TV from Twitter, with the women's tag team division not only having 3 heel tag teams and 1 face tag team, is the WWE women's tag team division dead? Do you think it's time for WWE to introduce a women's mid-card title, like a women's US title, women's IC title, and women's North American title for NXT? They absolutely do not need 3 women's mid-card belts, but if they want to introduce 1 for all 3 brands, I feel like that would be a much better use of a women's mid-card belt than the pointless tag team titles. They're just putting every team against each other and seeing what sticks. They're just doing every combination of every team against each other, and no one fucking cares. So, yeah, just get rid of the belts and introduce a new women's title in its place. I feel like that'd be a much better use of that spot for a championship than what they have right now. With Sting's final match this Sunday at AEW Revolution, what are your favorite moments of Sting from WCW, TNA, or WWE? I still remember the match with Triple H and the face-off between the NWO and DX being intense. You know, people won't like that answer or my answer, but I don't know about my favorite, but some of my favorite Sting moments were in WWE. The run was not all that great, but the time that we did get Sting in WWE, I thoroughly enjoyed. I really enjoyed Sting in WWE. The debut was great. Some of the moments leading up to the Mania match were great. The match wasn't great with Triple H, but some of the moments, it was more of a nostalgia thing, but I thought it was fun. Even the Rollins match wasn't all that bad. And some of the build, I mean, the fact that he lost those 2 matches with Triple H and Rollins sucked, but you know, the fact that he was around and the return the night after SummerSlam in 2015 I thought was awesome. I really like Sting in WWE, honestly. Like, those were some of my favorite Sting moments, for as weird as that sounds, because I didn't grow up on Sting in WCW. I've barely seen any of Sting in WCW, so I can't really say any of those moments. I've loved him in AEW. I think he's had a great run there. In TNA, my favorite... I was never the biggest Sting fan in TNA. My favorite TNA Sting stuff, more so in retrospect than at the time, would be Joker Sting. I think Joker Sting was a lot of fun. Like, I went back and watched that whole compilation video that TNA did of Joker Sting, and it was awesome. He really dedicated himself to that character. And in retrospect, I wasn't really a big fan of it at the time, but in retrospect, I've become a bigger fan of Joker Sting. So probably Joker Sting, and also what he's done in AEW, like I said. Their last question, which wrestler whose potential has been wasted on the main roster for the last 5 years? Asuka was wasted because of fans on Twitter. I don't know where the fuck that came from. Nakamura could have been champion while he was red hot. And Kairi Sane should have started her main roster run as a single star and not as a tag team. I mean, you mentioned all Japanese talent, which I guess you're not entirely wrong. I mean, whose potential has been wasted? Asuka is probably one of the most decorated wrestlers in that company's history, man or woman. So I can't even say Asuka was wasted. I mean, could she have been bigger? Yeah, but wasted? Come on. Nakamura, same thing. It's kind of hard to say that he's been wasted when he was a former Royal Rumble winner, U.S. champion, tag team champion, IC champion, shit like that, you know? So I can't even say that. Kairi Sane, again, she also has had a lot of success. She could have been bigger, but she's back now. You know, she's had success. You gotta go. The last 5 years, it's gotta be like Keith Lee, Aleister Black, guys that could have been main roster main eventers in WWE, but were fucked over by creative and fired. So it's got to be like those guys. EC3 being another one, maybe not to their level, but EC3 was also completely fucking wasted. He never even had a chance when he was in that company 5 years ago. So EC3, Ricochet, maybe Ricochet a little bit, but he's also had a lot of success. EC3, Aleister Black, Keith Lee, those are the 3 names that come to mind. In the past 5 years, those are the biggest what-ifs, not the people that you mentioned. At the Average Grunt from Twitter, hot or cold, the Ruthless Aggression era has had the best run of WrestleManias of all the eras. From WrestleMania 19 to 24, there's not a single bad or even middling WrestleMania out of the bunch. You know, probably, I don't know if that's really much of a bold opinion. That's probably a cold take, not a hot take. Because you're right, Mania 19 was very good. 20 was good. I think 19 was really good to great. 20, it was just a long fucking show. I don't really love 20, but it is a good Mania. It's not a middling Mania, but it's a good Mania. 21 is great. 22 is good. I've never been the biggest fan of Mania 22 or 23, but they are pretty good Manias, and 24 was a great show, I think, as well. So, and then 25 wasn't great, and 18 wasn't great. So, yeah, I mean, from that stretch, they didn't really have a bad Mania. I would say the current stretch of Manias that we're on right now are putting that to the test. Because I think Mania 37 was very good, if not a great Mania. 38 was great overall, and 39 was even better. So I think the stretch that we're on right now really puts that one to the test as far as the best stretch of Manias. Because there's no stretch of Manias in the first 10 of them that were great consistently. 11 sucked. 12 was, what was WrestleMania 12? When was WrestleMania 12? 96? Right? Yeah, 96? Yeah, okay. That's not among the greatest of all time, is it? Mania 10, I think, is better. 13, awful. 14, 15, 16 were not good. That's probably the worst stretch of Manias. And 17 is amazing, but 18 wasn't, 18 was good. 18 was good. I think the other ones are better, though. 19, 20, and 21, and 22 and 23. So, yeah, you're probably right, though. I feel like that stretch of Manias is definitely the best of all time consistently. Your second question, do you think that at some point Tony could talk Warner Discovery into letting him rebrand Rampage as a Ring of Honor show? It would finally get the promotion on national TV and would be a better use of the show than what they're doing right now, in my opinion. Then they would just need to add more pay-per-views. Yeah, that's not going to happen. If that was going to happen, it would have already happened. I guarantee you Tony Khan would have wanted to make Collision the Ring of Honor show. Like, and wanted to get more wrestling on TNT. I guarantee you they wanted Ring of Honor. He wanted Ring of Honor to be on TNT instead of Rampage or in Collision. Because why? You already have the IP, so why not? But Warner was like, no, we're all set. Like, the fact he had to put it on the Honor Club service and pay $10 for, which is just an absolute ripoff. For a fucking dark show? Come on. But the fact that they did that tells you that Warner did not want Ring of Honor. And the fact that Ring of Honor, they've done absolutely nothing to make it special. But here's the thing, like with NXT is the same thing. NXT was on TV at one point a long time ago when it first started. And then they kicked it off TV because it just wasn't that good. The show sucked. And the ratings weren't that strong, so they kicked it off the show and they put it on the WWE.com and then on Hulu and then on the network and whatever 10 years ago. It wasn't until 2019 they were like, hey, we want it back because it's a hot product. Ring of Honor is not a hot product at all. Ring of Honor is the farthest thing from hot. It's a very ice-cold product. Why the fuck would they want that on television? Rampage isn't all that great, but Rampage has more star power. And I guess what you're saying is they would have to put more effort into it if it was taking the place of Rampage. I prefer Ring of Honor as a 1-hour show. Rampage is 1 hour. I prefer Ring of Honor as 1 hour. I would like to see it just replace Rampage, but that's not going to happen. Because if it was going to happen, it would happen already. And Ring of Honor fucking sucks. It's not a terrible show, but it's basically Dark with the Ring of Honor branding is what it is. So they're not going to want to put that on. If Dark wasn't on TV, they're not putting Ring of Honor on TV. Let's put it that way. His third question here. How would you get Nakamura out of the WrestleMania card? I think a match with Andrade could work if he's a face. If Andrade's a face, that is. It'd be a damn shame if he was left off the show with nothing to do. I think he will be left off the show. After all the good work that he's done as a heel, it would be a shame if he's not on the card, but it doesn't really bother me. Nakamura's been at enough Manias. It doesn't really matter to me at this point. He's not like a hot commodity. Like, he's not winning a lot of matches, so does it even really matter? But two things. One, he's probably going to end up in the Honor of the John Memorial Battle Royal is my pick. But if he's going to be on the card in any capacity, him and Andrade one-on-one is just fucking random. I mean, Andrade will probably be in a multi-man match as well. What I think they would do is and what I hope they do, is do a number one contenders match for the Intercontinental Championship on night one with people like Nakamura, Gable, Zayn, Nakamura, people like that. The winner getting Gunther on night two. That's what I would like to see. I could see it being Bronson Reed. Sheamus probably won't be in, but Bronson Reed, Sheamus, maybe Ricochet, but who cares? Like, Ricochet's been in so many of those matches, no thanks, but he would probably be in. Gable, Zayn, people like that. The winner gets Gunther on night two. So that's probably what they would do. That's what I would like to see. That's what they would do if they were going to get Nakamura on the show. I don't know if they'll definitely do that match, but more than likely he'll be in the Honor of the John Memorial Battle Royal on the SmackDown Before Mania is my pick. That's probably what's going to happen, so just be prepared for it. J. Alex Ferrans from Twitter, JJF, his question was, do you think we'll see more ex-AEW stars in WWE keep their name rather than revert to their previous WWE name, as we saw with Shawn Spears? Also, why has Shawn Spears never done a spear and called it Shawn Spears U? Feels like a slam dunk. Because that'd be fucking ridiculous. I appreciate the pun, but that would be so dumb. At least once it would be funny, yes. Anyway. As far as the AEW WWE name thing, yeah, I could see them doing more of that. Like, it is funny because they're doing that with Andrade right now. They're calling him Andrade El Idolo. They changed his name in WWE was Andrade. Andrade El Idolo is better. So I'm kind of glad they're doing that. The Shawn Spears thing really surprises me because I've always said that if people like Zack Ryder were to come back, and he had more success than Ty Dillinger, he would go by Zack Ryder because that's like, they built up the name Zack Ryder. People know Zack Ryder. At this point, I'm not so sure. And people know Zack Ryder, but like if he were to come back, they might even might call him Matt Cardona. Shawn Spears, I think, is his real name, if I'm not mistaken. I think Shawn Spears is his real name. They're just calling him by his real name, which is what he did in AEW. And he didn't have a lot of success in AEW, but he's basically doing the same character. If he's Ty Dillinger, people would, the perfect 10. Like, he'll probably do that again at some point in NXT. I wouldn't be surprised, but if they want to push him as the serious heel that he was in AEW and he didn't have a lot of success as, but whatever, he tried. It was good early on in the Cody stuff, then he lost to Cody, and then it was fucking buried. You know what? It's worth a shot. So, I don't see why not. I think it's worth the shot. I'm glad they're doing it. And you know what? He's not going to be like NXT champion or anything, but I think it's cool. That really surprised me that they called him Shawn Spears because he was always Ty Dillinger in WWE. For like the 5 years that he was on NXT TV and the main roster shows, he was always Ty Dillinger. So I appreciate the breath of fresh air by calling him by his AEW/real name. I hope that we do see more of that. Like Jade Cargill, they didn't change her name. If they already have an established identity in another... they already had an established identity in WWE, but it sucked for the most part. Then use the established identity from AEW if you can. I don't see why not. There's no reason to change it. Like Ricky Starks, they call him Ricky Starks. There's no reason to change Ricky Starks. So, that's what I would do. At Kyle Rochelle from 19. Kyle Rochelle 19 from Twitter, rather. As we wind down here. What's with the Becky hate? What did Becky do that was so bad? Winning the Chamber? ? I like Liv Morgan, but it doesn't make sense to have Rhea and Liv at WrestleMania to me. That match will happen later on this year. Why does it have to happen at WrestleMania? It actually does make sense to do Rhea and Liv, because Rhea put Liv on the shelf. Liv was the last woman to beat her. It actually makes a lot of sense. But it also just makes just as much sense to do Becky and Rhea, because it is the bigger match. It's a fresh match we've never seen on WWE TV aside from that one NXT match 5 years ago. They haven't really done it before. It's a big match. They've been building to it for a long time now. But the Becky hate, I agree, it's stupid, but people don't like Becky winning because they just either don't like Becky or they don't want her to win because they would rather have Liv win because she's their favorite. If you're bored by Becky, that's fine, but the Becky hate definitely comes down to my favorite did not win. That's why I'm mad Becky won. That's really what it comes down to. If Bianca won, it'd be the same exact thing. So I'm glad Becky won. I would have wanted to see Liv win, but, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. Becky was the biggest choice. She made the most sense, and aside from Liv, and, it's the match that makes sense for Mania. So it doesn't really bother me. It'll be a great match. The build should be fine, and hopefully we get Rhea and Liv at some point down the road, and maybe a backlash coming into WrestleMania. At E138 from Twitter, will Logan Paul stay U.S. champion past WrestleMania? At this point, I think he will. I've said before, I think it's a guarantee that he loses at Mania because he's a part-timer. Why would they keep the belt on him? But I don't know if he's so much of a part-timer anymore. It really does feel like he's, kind of more of a full-timer in this company. He's been appearing on SmackDown pretty regularly for most of the year. So I would think he might retain, especially if he faces Randy Orton. Randy Orton does not need the United States Championship at all. Randy Orton does not need to win that match. So if it's Randy and Logan 1-on-1, I kind of hope Logan Paul wins. And he does lose it to LA Knight at some point. Maybe in France at Backlash. If not SummerSlam, but that might be a little too long. So I'm going to say LA Knight takes it from him. If Randy Orton faces Logan at Mania, I would want Logan Paul to win. Orton winning would not be the worst thing, but Randy Orton does not fucking need that title. He's already won that title before. Doesn't need it again. I'm going to say Logan Paul retains, and I hope he does. Last question from, let's see here. At Misdemeanor6, I'm losing my voice. I've been talking for so long. From Twitter, if AEW does do an Iron Lady match, wouldn't it technically be an Iron... it would be an Iron Woman match or a Women's Iron Man match is what they call it. But would it not technically be an Iron Maiden match? Something to think about. If AEW does do one of those, they're asking, who would you like to see in the match? I would love to see Deonna Purrazzo versus Serena Deeb. That would be a great match. I think Deonna and Serena would be sick. Either Deanna and Serena, because Deanna's done an Iron Woman match before in TNA and it was great with Jordan Grace. So either Deanna and Serena or Deanna and Mercedes Moné. Because Mercedes has had a couple of Iron Woman matches before in NXT with Bayley, which was great. And also the one on the main roster with Charlotte back in 2016. So she's had history in those matches. She's excelled in those matches. We know she can go in those matches. I think those matches were 30. I mean, you can make him 30, you can make him 60. It doesn't really matter. I think 30 is more bearable, but 60 you could do as well. To me, the bigger match to do would be Deanna and Mercedes. But Deanna and Serena would be great as well. Good question, though. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's loaded mailbag edition of #AskGSM for Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, episode 535. Is that what I said earlier? Yeah, 535. Holy shit. Closing in on 550. Feels like just yesterday we did episode 500 with Alexis last summer, but already closing in on 550. Another 15 weeks away, I suppose. But thank you guys, as always, for sending in the great questions. A lot of great ones this week. I think we had the best mailbag this week than we have had. I mean, every week is great, but the most loaded, best, wide variety of questions we've gotten in a while, I think. I really enjoyed this week's episode with all the questions we got. So thank you guys for that. If you want to send in a question, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. With a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Again, guys, thank you so much for checking out the video. I appreciate it. A lot of great content going up right now here on the channel. If you haven't already, check out my interview with Randy Orton here on the channel from last Thursday. I've been putting up a lot of archived content. There's interviews from 2017, 2019, last year. It's just shit that's run elsewhere, but I never had a chance to put up here on the channel. So if you're wondering why is this going up now? Why is this going up here? Blah, blah, blah. It's because I never had a chance to publish the actual video or audio of the interview until now. They've been used for other stuff, articles, podcasts, stuff like that, but I haven't posted the actual interview, and I like to have all my interviews in one place here in the channel. So if you're wondering why this is all going up now, that's why. But enjoy the content. Other stuff going up as well, pretty soon up here on the channel, including, reviews and Q&A videos like this one, SmackDown reviews, and, stuff like that. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Have an awesome one, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Enjoy Leap Day tomorrow, and I'll catch your ass down the road.